Okay, so my hot take is that it was never funny ever.
It wasn't funny.
It was never funny to begin with.
It was not funny. I don't know what was going on. The kids thought it was. But
What's funny to me is how worked up you can get on stuff like this when always I'm the one who is like, this is not okay for kids. And you are like putting your foot down. Welcome to another episode of Is This for Kids? I am Jonathan Beard Blevins.
I am Katie, MrsRuvi.
And today we are going, you know what we should do? We should make a chart. A Venn diagram, if you will.
Okay.
Let's do it right now. I'm dead serious. We're going to make a Venn diagram that you can visualize in your head here of Jim Carrey movies. Okay?
Okay.
We have good Jim Carrey movies.
Okay.
Bad Jim Carrey movies.
Uh-huh.
And then the middle. Like, okay.
Which are both good and bad? They're okay.
They're okay.
Okay.
In the middle. That's the Venn diagram.
All right.
It's been a long time since we've done a Venn diagram. Okay, great. Let's go with some of the good Jim Carrey movies.
Liar, liar.
Agree 100%. The Mask.
Disagree.
Really? Middle?
No.
Bad?
I don't like it. It's bad.
Really? What's the one where he's...
We've talked about this. I don't like Jim Carrey.
Oh, yeah. What about the one where he's...
Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Yeah, good.
Mm-hmm.
What about the one where he's the TV?
Truman Show.
Truman Show. Good.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Bad.
Literally everything else.
And nothing in the middle for you?
I mean...
Bruce Almighty. Bruce Almighty
is actually quite good.
I'm going to call that one good.
Yeah, Bruce Almighty was good.
Ace Ventura, Pet Detective.
So bad it doesn't even fit in the freaking diagram.
Okay, let me just be clear. We are going to talk about Ace Ventura, Pet Detective today here on Is This for Kids? Before I rewatched this, if you would have said to me, John, what age do you think it is appropriate to watch Ace Ventura, Pet Detective? Mm-hmm. And what age were you when you watched it? Mm-hmm. That I wouldn't be able to answer the second question because I have a really bad memory with age, but I was probably 12 to 15.
Mm-hmm. Came out in 93.
Okay. Oh, wow. So I would have been 6. So I was probably 13, 12 or 13. Yeah, I wouldn't have. My parents would not have let me watch it. Like,
okay.
You know, maybe I saw it on TV the first time as well. Mm-hmm. But I would have probably told you it's for kids. Yeah, humor back then was definitely not as innuendo as it is now. It wasn't as dirty as it is now. It wasn't as raunchy as it is now, probably. So it's probably like a middle of the road in the Venn diagram and probably appropriate for kids. Boy, was I shocked.
Yeah. So I actually asked that question on Twitter. What age were you when you first saw Ace Ventura, Pet Detective? Now, factoring out the people who just like polls, one of the options was never saw it. I like polls because for whatever reason, sometimes people just like to click buttons. Yeah. And you're like, here, fine. So you have to do some math to get it out.
Survey me, please, government.
Of the people who actually did see the movie, 80% saw it in either elementary school or middle school. And of that 80%, it was exactly 50-50. So half of these people, so 40%, saw it in elementary school. The other half saw it in middle school.
Wow.
Yeah. So our mutual friend Jeremy said that he saw it when he was 7.
Yeah, I remember. I mean, I remember now, like that you're talking about it. I remember like my friends seeing it when I was probably 7 or 8.
Yep.
And me like not being allowed to.
Well, this was like the breakout movie for Jim Carrey because this movie was so successful. Is how Jim Carrey had a career. So all of the big Jim Carrey lines come from this, like the "alrighty then," like that comes from here. That's where this movie made his career, and I am just absolutely appalled that anybody saw this as a kid. I think I saw it as a kid, and rewatching this, I was like,
this is bad if Ruvi is saying this.
I'm confident I didn't see this as a kid because I would have gotten most of these references. They are not innuendo. They are just obvious. Some of them are innuendo, but like somebody on Twitter commented, by the way, they're like, because of this, I was talking with my butt for a year because there's a part where he bends over and he's like, do you mind if I ask you a question? And then just starts talking with his butt cheeks.
Yeah, I remember that. Yep.
Which like, that's crude humor. Okay. if that was the worst that it was, I would have let that go, but it gets so much worse.
I'm still hung up on your, like, this is the movie that made Jim Carrey because I'm pretty sure that Liar Liar and
95.
The Mask and Dumb and Dumber, I think both came out in the same year as Ace Ventura.
I'm 90.
Can we doop on Google?
Hold on. He opened 94 with a starring turn in Ace Ventura, a film that crashed on his extremely physical brand of humor. for that cash in.
And The Mask was July of 1994 as well.
Yeah, so they were all in the same year. So it's this was the first one to come out, but it was very possible that just the stacking was the thing. But this was just like every single kid I knew in elementary school was doing the Alrighty Then thing. It was really gross.
This is like, I mean, the Jim Carrey lore. December 1994 was Dumb and Dumber. July 1994 was The Mask, and then of course first was Ace Ventura.
Like, I think if you ask Jim Carrey now, would you let your kids watch this movie? I don't think he would.
Interesting.
Like, can I read you some lines?
I would like you to read me some lines.
Okay.
I'm with you, and I have a couple of hot little takes as well
to
share here about Ace Ventura: Pet Detective.
So there are some things that could go over a kid's head. Like the very first scene in the movie, he's recovering a dog for a scantily clad woman who can't pay him, so she offers to take off his pants instead. And they're like, well, what? I mean, like that probably kid would get that was something sex-based, but then he starts swinging from a ceiling, like a rafter thing. He's holding onto a doorway. It's clearly meant to be an oral sex joke, but like just based on how much swinging he's doing, I can't imagine that it's even physically possible to be in that situation. So it is so silly that like a kid probably wouldn't know what was going on. They're like, oh, she's doing something down there, but I don't know what it is. So there's those kinds of things. But then we have quotes like, the guy steps on a bug and he says, what was this crime? Or what do you think I did? And he says, I would figure out your motive, which was that you saw the size of the bug's dick and then got jealous. And then I would lose 30 pounds porking your wife. And you're like,
yikes.
What? There's no missing what that is. There's a joke there where I don't want to say these words. I can't say them, but you're just going to have to trust me that they're really, really bad. Then there's this weird scene. You know, we talked in our Homeward Bound episode about name calling, right? And how that was a thing with the animals. But there's this particular scene where Courtney Cox is sitting outside with Ace Ventura, and she says something, and they're not arguing. They're not fighting. There's no reason for him to be mean to her. She's just talking to him. And he says, yeah, well, you're ugly. And she's like, fine, Ace. And then he's like, get a moving, fatty. And like calls after her, and he yells again. He's like, saddlebags. And you're like, why are you calling this woman ugly and fat when she's objectively not those things? You're not arguing. You're not fighting. There's no context. Are we supposed to believe that being a dick is funny? Like, you're just being a jerk. It wasn't funny.
Okay, so my hot take is that it was never funny ever.
It wasn't never funny.
It was never funny to begin with.
It was not funny. I don't know what was going on. The kids thought it was. But.
What's funny to me is how worked up you can get on stuff like this when always I'm the one who is like, this is not okay for kids. And you are like putting your foot down. I'm with you. And I am not, like, I know sometimes people think that I'm easily offended. I'm really not. Like, some of my favorite comedians are the most inappropriate comedians. I love Bill Burr. Like, it is very hard to offend me. I just am careful with like what I let my kids watch. But like, in my opinion, raunchy comedy in general, like for the sake of being raunchy with no other purpose than to like be a little edgy, is just not funny. And that's really all this movie was. It's just like raunchy joke after raunchy joke after raunchy comment. After inappropriate. I mean, it felt like when I was rewatching, it almost felt like it was that when it was released at the time, they knew that it was going to be watched by a bunch of young people, and it was kind of like, this is what they're going to think is funny, and they were just, I mean, right a little bit, because a lot of people loved it when I was growing up, but I think they just loved it because they got to watch something that was super inappropriate.
Well, we're going to talk next week about Quiet on Set, which talks a lot about children's comedies in this era, in the 93 era. And the whole thing was to push the envelope of what you could show kids engaging in or show to kids that was overtly sexual. Like, that was sort of a thing in the writers' rooms of comedies at that period in history. And so I feel like this is very much that. And if you, we're going to talk about this next week, but like, if you watched that documentary and you felt like, oh my gosh, how are we letting that? This is exactly the type of thing that we were talking about where you're like, oh my gosh, how did they get away with that? It's this. You probably have fond memories of it as a kid, but you're missing what it was because it's very bad. It's very, very bad. Like, there's a scene where inexplicably Courtney Cox decides she's going to sleep with Ace Ventura, despite the fact that she's hot and he's annoying. But but this isn't even like a euphemistic sex scene. It is loud, aggressive. There's a bedboard like smashing into the wall.
Yeah.
Like, it is it's not nice.
Yeah.
And then she turns over and she's like, "Oh, 3 times, Ace?" And he's like, "Sorry, that never happens to me. I must have been tired." And you're like, "Oh, geez, that's so gross." But then also it like perpetuates this disgusting thought process about how you treat women in that kind of a scenario, that like abusive sexual relationships are appropriate. It's just not good. I don't like it. I don't like it at all.
Safe to say you would say this movie, not for kids.
Not for kids. It's a kids movie that's not for kids.
Ruby's like, all that said, with a parent, 11, 12.
11, 12. I think it's fine, 9 and up.
You know, if your kid comes to you all the time and says, "Can I watch this?" and you just say, no, I mean, eventually they're just going to find somewhere else to watch it.
I watched this alone in my closet where my kids couldn't see it because I had because this fell into our category of problematic movies.
Right.
Like there's a lot of controversy among various groups regarding Ace Ventura. So I was on my guard that I'm not going to watch it in front of my kids. And my gosh, I'm so glad that I didn't. Sorry, I'll let you say some things now.
I'm going to say one thing and one thing only. I am with you, by the way. I will always take one opportunity to tease you since I get 100% more of it, so that's okay.
Sure.
But I'm with you here. I'm with you. This movie is not for kids. I would like to say one thing about it, though. There's a lot of controversy that saying that this movie has something even at all to do with transgender, and I would just like to say I have similar thoughts to Mrs. Doubtfire. It's just a non-issue in this movie. It's there in Mrs. Doubtfire. There was a dad pretending to be a nanny so he could be close with his kids. He wasn't struggling with whether or not he was a guy or a girl. It was just that's what he was doing. In this movie, there is a guy who is pretending to be a girl to get away with a massive crime. That is all that happened. And so it is interesting to me that we try to go back and we're looking for these horrible things in movies, making things that aren't there for whatever political thing we believe in or whatever moral thing that we want to make an issue about. I just don't think that that's what's happening here. But regardless, just not worth really watching the movie for kids.
Yeah, to that end, without speaking to that issue specifically, but there is never a time where it's appropriate to show in a child's movie genitalia through silk panties. And I don't care if that genitalia is on the front or tucked in somebody's booty. None of that is okay. You don't show that to children. It's not okay. And that does happen. If you don't recall that at the end of the movie, it's shocking. I am a grown woman and it was shocking to me. Like it's not appropriate. It's massively inappropriate. Sorry, I have nothing better to say than that. It's just so bad. And it's one of these things that I feel like people are going to come for us in the comments and be like, "You didn't like SpongeBob." I'm like, I don't like SpongeBob, but SpongeBob is fine for kids. I don't like Ace Ventura, and it's not fine for kids.
Yeah, I'm with you. And it's a little weird to me. This is one of those movies, and I've said this before in other movies, like it's rated PG-13. Why not just make it rated R and then have whatever fun you want with it? Like that's in my mind, that's where I go with movies like this. If you were trying to make this crazy, I'm just saying, you know what I mean though? Like if you're gonna, why make it something that's so crazy that you hope kids will see it rather than just going all out, using even more language, make even more jokes that you think are funny and just call it what it is and rate it R and don't market it for any kids. But yeah, I'm with you. In my opinion, not for kids. Liar, Liar, much better choice.
Liar, Liar is a great choice. Do Liar, Liar. It's fantastic. Hey, if people wanted to find more of this, where could they find it?
I think go to isthisforkids.com. Be very active on our YouTube, our Instagram. There's a ton of things that we are doing on those platforms right now, including making fun reels and responding to comments.
All the comments.
And there's just a lot going on. So go to isthisforkids.com and check out all the different things that we have happening.
Yeah, and if you're watching this on YouTube right now, make sure that you hit the subscribe button down there and leave us a comment. Let us know which Jim Carrey movie you think is better than Ace Ventura. Hey, there's a lot of content out there for us to navigate as parents.
I'm Jonathan Blevins.
I'm Katie, MrsRuvi. Let us help you decide.
Is this for kids?